Welcome to week 7. Now, this is the week that most students think the course was always heading toward. Communications week. Advertising, social media, digital strategy, the stuff that's visible, the stuff that's creative, the stuff that actually reaches people. And all of this is true, but I want to start with the question that reframes what we're about to look at, because the question is not what channels should we use? The question is, are you telling one story? We have spent 6 weeks building a strategic picture of your brand. You know who their customer is, you know what the brand stands for, you know how it's priced and how it's distributed. Now the question is whether all of those decisions are being communicated consistently across every touch point that the customer has with the brand. Because if they're not, the customer receives a really fragmented message. And a fragmented message is worse than no message. It creates confusion, and confusion ends up eroding trust. Now, chapter 14 introduces this concept of integrated marketing communications, often abbreviated IMC. And the Kraft Heinz case that it opens with is really useful because it shows both what can go wrong when IMC breaks down and then what recovery looks like. So Kraft Heinz has some of the most recognized brands in the world: Velveeta, Heinz Ketchup, Kraft Macaroni and Cheese. These products are in tens of millions of households. And for most of a decade, the company prioritized cost cutting over brand investment. So they reduced significantly their advertising spend. They became less visible, less emotionally resonant, and less relevant to that changing consumer. The brands were present, but they were not meaningful. The IMC recovery they launched doubled ad spending, and it refocused on emotional campaigns that connected iconic brands to real cultural moments. So they had a couple campaigns that I've shown here: the La Dolce Velveeta campaign that reimagined the brand around indulgence, the Help Yourself campaign that made the brand feel generous and warm rather than just familiar. And these are not just creative choices. They are the result of a company deciding what story it wants to tell and then telling it consistently across every channel. Chapter 14 defines integrated marketing communications as a concept where a company carefully integrates and coordinates its many communications channels. They deliver a clear, consistent, and compelling message about the organization and its brands. The word that matters most in that definition is consistent. The IMC failure at Kraft Heinz was not that any individual ad was bad. It was that the company stopped making sure that every touch point was reinforcing that same story. So, for your brand audit video this week, that is the question I want you to bring. Find one piece of real marketing that your brand is doing right now and ask, is this consistent with everything else I know about the brand? Does it reinforce the positioning? Does it reinforce the target customer, the brand promise? Or is it telling a different story? Now, chapter 15 covers advertising and public relations. And the case that it opens with is Maximum Effort, which is one of the most interesting advertising stories of the past few years. Maximum Effort is a small agency founded by Ryan Reynolds and George Dewey. What they do is called fastvertising, and it works like this. They monitor cultural moments in real time, and when something relevant happens, they produce and release an ad within hours or days rather than the weeks or months a traditional agency would need. So I don't know if you remember or watched this, but in the Sex and the City reboot, there was a character, Mr. Big, who died on a Peloton. Well, Peloton's stock dropped almost 15% in 2 days just from that TV show. Maximum Effort had a new Peloton ad starring that actor, reframing the entire narrative out within 72 hours. When Match.com needed to acknowledge the absurdity of dating during the pandemic, Maximum Effort turned around a campaign that captured that exact cultural mood within days. Here's what I want you to take from chapter 15. Maximum Effort is not winning because of budget. They are not outspending competitors. They are winning because of speed, that cultural awareness, and the discipline to make advertising that people actually want to share rather than skip. But the underlying principle is what Chapter 15 calls the creative concept. The big idea that brings a message strategy to life in a very distinctive and memorable way. Maximum Effort has a strong creative concept in everything they make. The ideas are generally funny, they're self-aware, and they are appropriate to the exact moment they appear. Now, that's not a function of AI. That's really a human judgment about what a culture finds funny and resonant right now. AI can help them with speed and audience targeting, but the idea still is theirs. Chapter 17 covers digital marketing, and the Coca-Cola case is a really good one to open with because Coca-Cola represents something pretty unusual. They're a company that built its global dominance through traditional mass media advertising and then successfully made a shift to digital without losing the brand. The numbers are pretty crazy. Coca-Cola spends over $5 billion annually on advertising worldwide, and now more than 60% of that paid media budget is digital. They have over 100 million followers across their main social platforms, and here is the one that I think is most revealing. The majority of Coke-related YouTube videos were not created by Coca-Cola. They were created by fans. They're a brand so strong that its customers are voluntarily producing and distributing content for it. That is not just an advertising strategy, that's a brand community strategy. And it took decades of really consistent brand building to make it possible. Chapter 17 introduces us to a really full toolkit of digital marketing, so online advertising, email, social media, mobile, content marketing, and the challenge of omni-channel integration. The strategic challenge that runs through all of this is the same one from Chapter 14, which is not what channels should we use, but how do we make all of these channels tell one coherent story. Coca-Cola's Real Magic campaign refresh was specifically designed with social media dynamics in mind. It's a visual identity that worked in a 15-second TikTok as well as a 30-second television spot. That kind of integration design thinking is what omni-channel actually means in practice. It is not just being present on every platform, it is making sure the brand is recognizable and consistent on every platform. This week's assignment includes a structured AI exercise, and I want to explain why it's required rather than optional. AI tools can produce an IM strategy for you for any brand in probably 30 seconds. They know what IMC recommendations are supposed to look like. They know the vocabulary. They know the framework concepts that we learned in Chapter 14, and you could give them a brand and a brief description, and it could generate tons of copy for you. But here's what it can't do. It can't know the intricacies of your brand or recent shifts in your distribution or the way that you noticed a gap in how your presence was in Instagram versus what your brand's promise is. It can't know your positioning statement and how that lands in a different way depending on what channel you use. Some of those things are specifics that you know from spending time with the brand and knowing it. That's that human input. So that AI draft is going to be generic. It'll be accurate in an abstract sense, but it will be disconnected from the specifics of the brand knowledge that you've been building over these last weeks. Your version should show the difference between those two things. And really my goal this whole class has been to show you the way to use AI, because in business, in marketing, you are going to use AI. But if you use it in a manner that is without judgment or that human input, it's going to create sloppy output that is not going to really help your brand. So that is this week, and we are almost wrapped up with this class, so I can't wait to see your work.